of Detroit, and it was done fairly recently. I want to mention that Stanton Manalakis' work has been commissioned by some of the largest corporations in the country, including the Marriott Corporation, DuPont Corporation, and Bechtel Industries. I think we're fortunate in having you with us today to share your work. Stay with us. We'll be right back. And welcome back. And we are speaking today with artist Stanton Manalakis. And we do have a phone number to share with you before we talk about his final painting. He lives out in California. He's here in the Detroit area visiting some relatives over the summer months. And if you are interested in any of his work, you can reach him at that number, area code 213-255-2751.
And I'm also listed in the central directory, so.
The center of
Los Angeles, just central.
Los Angeles. Okay.
Yeah, ask for Los Angeles, I'm there.
Now this is one of your larger pieces, but this is Detroit. What year?
Yes, approximately 1920, and this was at the time that my mother was a young girl. And I saw a series of these old photographs of old Detroit, and I said, gee, you know, that really started kindling something inside me. I mean, I really started getting this wave of nostalgia began to sweep over me. And I said, this has to be done. And so I set out to pick out a novel view of this area. Consequently, I had to move the Soldiers and Sailors Monument over just a little bit to get it into the picture. I sent my cousin Sandy down to this area to take videos of the Soldiers and Sailors Monument, which I worked from to develop the details. And the details are sufficient so that you can read the inscription on the plaques, something probably which nobody has ever done. So if somebody wants to ever see this painting, they can see what this plaque says. Now, everybody would say, oh, yeah, this is where Sam's Cut Rate used to be. But before Sam's Cut Rate, this used to be Gold Clothes, Rose Sinks, and this was the old Detroit Opera House, which served as a Democratic Democratic headquarters for Wayne County. Now, over here, this is my favorite feature of this piece, because I looked at this fountain over here, and I was discussing this with Patience Nauta, the Detroit Historical Society, who was this lovely woman who helped me put this whole thing together. Again, very gracious and giving me all kinds of Xerox copies. She even gave me reverse street directories, which enabled me to check the businesses out to make sure that every business that I showed was actually at that location. This is the old Cass Fountain, which is now in Palmer Park. And when I was a child, I used to go to St. Nicholas Greek Orthodox Church, which was right around the block from there. And on spring days before church was out, we would go over to feed the ducks in the ponds while we were waiting. You know, Sunday school was over and we were waiting to, you know, let the parents out of church. Yeah. And a bunch of us used to go climbing on this fountain because in the 1930s, during the Depression, they moved this to Palmer Park. So when I saw that, I said, this painting has to be done, and because that's part of my own personal history that
remembrances, right.
And now this is the Majestic Building over here as it was in the old days. My father used to work there, and I found a number of people that I knew that had worked there also. Then this is the old Sanders Building here. This was Haynes Bazaar, which prior to this, I think, or after, was the Parisian Cloakroom, which was interesting because Parisian Cloakroom was a chain store that was operating prior to the turn of the century, much like Boston Shoes or the Boston stores, which were some of the early chain stores. This later became Klein's Millinery at a later time, I think, and Klein's Millinery became something else. Now, this here is the Siegel cloak. Was it Siegel's? Okay, but it was a cloak company, Siegel Cloak Company. Was the name they used in the old day. Okay. And now, one of my first instruments I got from Grinnell Music Company, and they used to have these music festivals you know, for young pianists. I had played piano. My mother made me. It's not something I wanted to do. Brass instruments were my thing. But the thing that caught my attention was Grinnell Brothers was also a real estate company.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and that really surprised me.
I see the sign that says Grinnell's Pianos there.
Yeah, and there's also a real estate, Grinnell Real Estate Realty Company also in there somewhere. And then as we go farther back, this is Fife's Shoes, and beyond that is the Fox Theater. Just beyond that.
I love the streetcars too. Now, would there have been 4 streetcars on the street at one time? Or is
yes.
There would have been.
Oh, yeah, especially during rush hour. The DUR and the DSR were very, very active in those days. And now, I got the colors of the streetcars. I researched them from Trans-Anglo Books, who were the people I did the Oakland streetcar piece. So they were, you know, as far as I know, these colors were the accurate colors that were of the livery of the DUR in those days. And kind of odd colors, but it made an interesting contrast to some of the, you know, the starker realities of the architecture. But the thing that just absolutely mesmerized me as I was doing this painting was the extent to which perspective really forced these windows into such very
tight spaces. Yes.
Yeah, tight spaces. And when as I was starting to paint it, one of my dealers came over to the house and he said, "My God, how are you going to make sense of that?"
But you did.
Yeah, and that was the trick. This was the hardest part about the piece. It was like knitting, you know,
Yes.
you know, stitch 2, purl 1, you know, and you had to keep track of it that way, or you
we're out of time,
Oh.
believe it or not. But this is just magnificent. A gorgeous painting of Detroit. Back in what year?
Back in 1920.
1920. Stanton, thank you
You're
very
welcome
much
very
for
much.
joining us today. You do magnificent work.
Thank you.
Thanks for
It's a pleasure
sharing
being
it.
here.
Thanks for sharing it. And thank you for sharing this half hour with us today. Join us again next week. Bye-bye.